Hey there, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Christopher Pellegrini and Stephen Lyman here with another edition of Show Tuesday. Happy Show Tuesday to everybody out there in
Good morning,
Show
Christopher.
Tuesday land. Good morning.
It's been a minute, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm back in the country on a time zone that is more stable, predictable. It's not more stable, it's just easier for me to imagine where I'm going to be
Sure.
on a Wednesday morning rather than a Tuesday evening, which I know is not the livest of nights in the calendar week, but it always just or usually happened that I had plans, meeting people, touring somebody around, introducing somebody to a set number of libations, and it was just never gonna work well. Plus, there's like how good is your Wi-Fi gonna be? That's always
Sure.
a concern. So thank you for holding down the fort,
Oh,
and
sure.
thank you to Maya for stepping in
Special
for a few
thanks.
weeks there too.
Absolutely. No, Maya picked it up while I was traveling, and then also when you and I both were in the U.S. And I know a year ago when our trips to the U.S. overlapped, we ended up missing a week and not even realizing it, and also having like
Right.
a 5-minute show and a 10-minute show. So hopefully Maya gave a little bit better content.
Oh yeah, she
Um,
definitely did.
yeah. So what's on your mind? How's your
Well, the trip was good as usual. It was a little more frenetic than usual, and I dealt with a lot more flakiness than usual. Just people kind of canceling things at the last minute. I changed time zones more frequently than usual.
Mhm.
So I now that I'm back here, it was funny because it didn't take me that long to get over the jet lag because I don't think I ever got over the jet lag. I think I was in a constant state of lag while I
Gotcha.
was over there, and it was a little bit ugly at times, but I made it work. All things considered, I think it was a decent trip. Met a lot of new people and learned a lot of new things. And I think that's the most important point. Was just the educational value of the trip for me was, as usual, off the charts. So I'm excited to keep on pushing this passion of ours. These indigenous spirits from Japan that still nobody knows what it's all about. So we got our work cut out for us. But yeah, how about you? How was your trip?
Yeah, no, mine was good. It was pretty busy as well. I think I'm definitely glad to be back. The travel is just not as easy as it was when I was younger, I think.
Mm.
Um, although I felt like I had really, really good luck with the domestic travel. I'd heard nightmares about how U.S. airports with delays and lack of security and really long lines and all of that. And I think I had one weather-related delay that, and we still ended up landing like 30, 45 minutes later
Yeah.
than scheduled. So it wasn't bad at all. I felt quite fortunate on that front. And I think the thing that it's interesting when you're living in some place, you don't necessarily notice how things evolve or how things change as much because things are changing constantly, right? A restaurant closes, a restaurant opens, a bar changes, management changes the menu. Like we, when you're living somewhere, that sort of stuff is just kind of gradual and it's a slow creep. When you leave for a year and you come back, it's like it's a different planet. Like
Yeah. Right.
especially I think because of the disruption of COVID, and of course we saw that last year where we hadn't been in the States since before COVID. Then we get back to New York and there's all the outdoor dining in the little wooden shanties, and that still
Yeah.
exists. But then just like all these other things have shifted, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit shocking, I guess, just the how big the changes have been, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not sure how much people who live there recognize it.
Hmm.
So that's just been kind of an observation of mine was um, these big shifts, especially I hadn't been in a city since before COVID. Like last year I was in New York, I was in DC, so I'd seen how those places had evolved a little bit. But this year I was in Seattle for the first time in a long time, since 2019 when I was on a book tour. Um, and it's just interesting to see like Seattle felt completely different.
Ah.
So just those kinds of shifts.
Yeah, a
Anyway.
lot of new locations to scope out. A lot of
Hmm.
places near and dear have, of course, moved on and become other storefronts, or some of them are still shuttered completely. It's not, obviously we're not back to 100, full strength yet
Sure.
on the
Yeah.
sidewalk, but the lay of the land has changed, and it seems to
Yep.
keep shifting. And yeah, there's a steep learning curve there if you're trying to go out there and see what people are drinking, how they're drinking it, and what the new trends are.
Yep.
um, if you don't live there, like you said, it definitely is like it's a bit of a punch to the mouth.
Yeah. I mean, having lived in New York for so long, it's funny. I realized I might have been. I'm kidding when I say this, but personally responsible for the survival of New York City's izakaya scene, because I think of the original izakaya that existed when I started to explore that type of dining and shochu and Japanese drinks. There must have been 2 dozen izakaya. I think there might be 4 of those left.
Mm,
I think we've lost 80% of them. Now there
yep.
have been new places that have come in and replaced them, but you're just never quite going to get the same vibe as Izakaya Riki with the old television showing, tube television showing, Japanese cooking shows, or sumo, with Japanese wait staff that had a hard time understanding your English orders and things like that. It was a different world then, and now you have these pretty remarkable, sophisticated izakaya setups, which I think are great. Places like Barmoga, Sakamai, Rule of Thirds. These are
Gongo.
just
Yeah.
Gongo. I didn't make it to Gongo, but
Okay, Gongo's pretty good.
yeah. And then Hakata Tonton did revive, and so that's the other thing is the places that have survived have often moved locations.
Yeah.
And Hakata Tonton was gone. They were a Motsunabe shop in West Village, and they reopened in Midtown, but after like a 5 or 6 year hiatus. Maybe not quite that long, but it was a several year hiatus where they were basically out of business, and they revived the brand and
Yeah.
opened a pretty impressive new izakaya in Midtown. So yeah, but it's just been interesting to see these transitions, and it's New York. Nothing ever stays the same.
Sure.
So,
City,
but
city that never goes to sleep, or whatever they say.
the city that never
Um,
sleeps. That's right.
yeah, city
But
that
a
never sleeps.
better
It
song than
sort
that.
of does now, but yeah,
That's right. It does now.
it kind of does now. They got
Well,
to
that was
come
a
up with a
big
new catchphrase.
big shift for me as well. Like it used to be, you couldn't get the 8 o'clock reservation because that's when the cool kids started to go out for dinner, and now you can't get the 6 p.m. reservation
Yeah, you
because
can't
everybody
get the
wants to go home
5:30
early.
reservation, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
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 no, that's absolutely accurate. I noticed the exact same thing. I was like, "What? It's 10. Everybody's filing out. Like, what is
yeah,
going on? What happened to this place?" Same is true in Japan too. I think to a large extent,
yeah. No,
just
you're right. You're
people's
right.
habits have changed, routines have changed, and you need a better excuse. I think we had this conversation earlier. A better excuse to leave the house, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the proposition, the value prop has changed entirely.
Yeah, no question.
But yeah, I mean, I already put booze news up there before we started talking. Like, we went down this nostalgic kind of journey of sorts. But one thing that is coming up, um, booze related, is, remember everybody that November 1st is Shochu and Awamori Day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's keep that, put that, if that's not on your calendar every year automatically, please put it in there, because we we need to get the word out. That's something that I'm very impressed with, how well Sake Day is done October
Hmm.
1st every year. There are huge festivals around the world. Um, I happened to be in the Bay Area at the time this year on October 1st. I didn't realize this, but people started asking me, "Are you going to Sake Day?" And I was like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" It's like, "Oh yeah, October 1st. Cool. Going to it." There was a huge event,
No kidding.
and it was sold out, so there was no chance for me to get tickets. But yeah, it's a big deal, and I think it's great that everybody's pulling in the same direction on that one. There were a bunch of sake makers that were in the Bay Area for that event, which I thought was
Mm.
great. We can dream. Hopefully, in the
Oh,
future,
sure,
something
sure.
something similar happens. But we need people to be talking about it. We need it to become a thing. It has to. People have to. We have to get to a point where every year it's not like people are like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that before. No, it's like, right, it's November 1st. We got to do something. All right, so
Yeah.
hopefully that's something that people can start planning ahead for. Izakaya will start putting it on the map.
Sure.
Bars will have some small celebration, some special menu, cocktail menu maybe.
Hmm.
And yeah, we need everybody lifting and pulling in the same direction on this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I used to do annual Shochu'day events when I was living in New York, but they were, small. I'd get, 10 friends together. I'd get, 20, 25 people out to a bar for a happy hour or something like that. But it was not a, not a big full on event. And you're
Yep.
right. On the other hand, you say sake day and it's very easy to remember. You say honkaku shochu and awamori day and it's a little bit
Yeah.
more of a mouthful. And it's three
Unwieldy.
words many people don't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little heavier lift, I guess. But no, I think you're right. November 1st. It's interesting in Japan. You and I kind of scoured the calendar, and there's not actually much happening on November 1st in Japan this year because it's a Tuesday, right? And they missed a perfect opportunity because that's Shochu'sday,
Yep.
right?
Dummies.
So, but people, as you said, people need an excuse to leave the house, and it's harder to get people out on Tuesdays than it is on weekends. There was that nice string of years where Shochu Day was basically on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like several years in a row,
Yeah,
and that
we'll
made
get
it
back there
really easy.
eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
but
it is a big ask too for a lot of these places because it is right in the middle of the season. I know that's also true for a lot of sake makers, but
mhm, mhm.
on October 1st. But
Maybe they just need to
yeah.
shift it to
Yeah, I
regions
don't
that
think
aren't
it's I
producing.
we talked about this before, put it in
Yeah,
May or June
right.
for crying out loud, right?
Yeah,
Um yeah,
or
beginning of the summer might be fun. Not during rainy season, please.
have your
But hey.
big event up in rice or barley shochu country where it's not the middle of gonna rot soon sweet potato production,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's all in
Yeah,
silos anyway.
that's right.
Right.
So
Yeah. So that's coming up, folks. So put that on the map. The one event that we have found that is of any significance, and I guess this is news to us. We just found
mhm.
out about this. Um, is November. I take that back. October 30th, which is a Sunday. Is that correct?
Yes,
It is
it is a
correct.
Sunday. Yep.
Yep. In Miyazaki City, they are reviving Non Giorno, which is a play on words between nomu, which means drink, and buongiorno, right? So non
Yep.
giorno, um, and it's going to be most, if not all, of the shochu makers in Miyazaki are getting together. They're doing that. I believe it's in the arcade, but I'm not sure. Actually, you know what? I think it's at Amu Plaza. I think it's in front of the station this year. I could be wrong.
Is it? Okay.
I
That's not a
I
bad
need to
area.
read
It's
that
all been
again.
all been
It's all been
renovated,
redone.
so
Yep.
yeah, wouldn't be worried.
Um, so it's only it's a first come first served. I think they only have 1,000 tickets. Again, you got to get there early, line up and get your ticket to be able to have your little mug so that you can go around and get free pours everywhere. um it's going, so we're gonna try to go.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I'll be there.
And but as Steven said, there's no major thing happening on the first in Kagoshima, which is where we always gravitate,
Hmm.
and we
Yep.
may be there anyway. Um, there are some smaller events that are quote unquote Shochu Day events that we will be reporting on as we're there, but it's still not back to normal, I think, is probably the understatement of the year. It's also a cliche now. Um, yeah, but there are some things going, and hey, everybody around the world, you should be doing your own thing too. So let's
Yeah, fair.
kit it up.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that sentiment. But that's good to let people know, remind them. Shochu Day, November 1st. But why don't we move on to cocktails? Because this is
Yeah,
another
let's do
thing.
that.
As I was mentioning, that all the old school izakayas have disappeared and the new ones have taken their place in New York. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Mhm.
The other thing that's started to take some traction is shochu and awamori cocktails, right? We don't,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have gotten, Riki was not going to make you a cocktail.
Mhm.
Riki was going to give you your bottle of shochu and a bucket of ice or a pot of hot water, and you're going to make your own drinks. Or if you ordered a chuhai, it was going to be korui shochu, basically low proof vodka that they're mixing in with fruit juices. So I think the shift is real. You see now actual cocktails being made with shochu.
Yeah. Oh, and it's not uncommon. It's
Yep.
different from last year. Even last year, it
Hmm.
was you found the odd cocktail here and there, and now it's I don't want to say it's common, but it's getting there. It's getting to the point where at least I mean we've talked about this brand before. Um, these guys have done a phenomenal job. Ichiko has done a great job
Oh
of
yeah,
getting Saiten out there. Saiten's all
yeah,
over the shop now, and
yeah. You'll see it.
it's got such a distinct bready nose to it
Yeah, all that
that
grain. Right.
you can smell it from a mile away. It really does actually, um, assert itself in the
Mhm.
recipe. So it's really interesting to see. And this is another change: is shochu cocktails, awamori cocktails that actually don't cover up the shochu or the awamori. It's a
Right,
very
right.
very different playing field now.
Yeah, no, you're starting to actually have the Shochu Express, which has always been my complaint. Is it's such a, especially when you're looking at lower proof, it's difficult to get it to shine through. But um, yeah, the Saiten from Ichiko has been, I think, a big shift. Obviously, the innovator, the guy who started all this is Jesse Fallowitz with Mizu Shochu, who has been out
Hmm.
there for over a decade now, pounding the pavement with his expressions. And the lemongrass and the green tea, I think, were changers, big changers, because he had 35% alcohol with high aromatics that would show up in cocktails, and that was a big step. And I think Ichiko, as the big boys do, recognized that Jesse was onto something, and they developed Saiten as
Hmm.
another quiver in the sorry arrow in the quiver, not
Hmm.
quiver in the arrow, and they and it's gotten traction. It's not just like, oh, there's a token shochu cocktail. You'll see Saiten in a couple cocktails on menus now,
Yeah. Yep.
right? It's really, it is becoming, and more mainstream. I'm not just talking about it in these modern izakayas. It's in cocktail bars. It's in restaurants that you might have a little bit of a Japanese flair to their cuisine, but they're not a Japanese restaurant,
Hmm.
and they'll have shochu on the menu. Places in suburban Philadelphia, and you know, kind of wild. I had a
Yeah.
shochu cocktail. I went up to Minneapolis, which I hadn't been in a long time, and there's this nice little resort town outside of downtown Minneapolis, probably 45 minutes away. I'd heard about it. It has a beautiful river and parks and things, and called Stillwater, Minnesota. I'd never heard of Stillwater, Minnesota, and I walk in to have a nice hamburger at this place that has arguably the best burger in Minnesota. I mean, it's probably fighting words for some people, but this place called Lola's Kitchen, they had a shochu cocktail on the menu
Huh.
in this little resort town in Minnesota, and it was wild. It was a tall cocktail with colorful sweet potato shochu,
Oh.
and it was delicious. It was a really really nice drink, and it's just great to see these things popping up in just unexpected places.
Yeah. It is. And I want to see. I want to encourage the experimentation with sweet potato shochu because it's I if I'm looking for the path of least resistance and I'm making a shochu based cocktail, I'm probably going to use a barley shochu or a rice shochu just because they have more streamlined flavor profiles. And forgive me, everybody who's listening to this now and in the future, there's a little bit less breadth of flavor and aroma, shall we say? The from the ends of the spectrum are not too wildly wickedly far apart, whereas with sweet potato shochu it really is a brand by brand consideration. You've got to figure out you got to figure out exactly how this is going to work with your citrus, with your acid,
Hmm.
with the other constituents of the cocktail recipe. But I really 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 want people, and we were talking about this last night, to figure out what the sweet potato shochu cocktail or cocktails are.
Yeah.
Whether and Thanksgiving's coming up, folks, so let's try mixing it with apple flavors, let's try mixing it with mulled wine flavors, let's try mixing it with pumpkin flavors. Everybody
Right.
loves a pumpkin spice latte. Where's my pumpkin spice sweet potato shochu cocktail? So there's there's so much opportunity, and we can see that it's happening in
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
States. One small challenge, of course, and this is the gorilla in the room, this is the white elephant in the room. There there's a higher price point. It's a premium product,
Hmm.
And that does make it difficult for a lot of bars to start messing with it, unless somebody walks in there and gives them a bottle for free to play with.
Hmm.
It's a lot of money to be mixing with. So, but hopefully people are able to hand out some sample bottles. I don't know how legal that is, but just to help move the needle a little bit and
Hmm.
make sure that we come up with. I mean, if we don't have a quintessential sweet potato shochu in 5 years time, then we're in big trouble. I mean, that just
Sure.
means like everybody's like entertaining the idea, but nobody wants to take any risks. And that would suck if we get that far and we still
Hmm.
don't know what the go-to sweet potato shochu cocktail is, because
Sure. I
we
mean,
don't yet.
the one that I recommend currently, at least for the bright fruity sweet potato shochu cocktails, is the Negroni, where you double up the shochu 2-1-1 with the Campari or Aperol and the vermouth. I haven't tried a white Negroni with it yet, but I've had bartenders suggest that might be a nice alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But the when you double up on that shochu, it starts to express through the Negroni. It's replacing the gin in a
Yeah,
classic Negroni, and it's a very different flavor profile than a gin Negroni, but
yeah.
it's delicious. The trouble is it's booze on booze on booze, so it's not a refreshing drink. You can only have one or two before you're ready to drink something lighter. But it's a pretty cocktail. So actually, I've started making those at home as my sort of end of the day cooking dinner
Mm-hmm.
drink. Take the edge off and have a little sip of something, and make myself a little emo shochu Negroni. What should we call
It's
it?
a
Emo
great
Negroni.
autumn drink, I think. I think that's a great call before we switch into stout season, where
Right, right,
because the weather's going to require it soon. But another thing we were talking about this yesterday too is like maybe there is a hot sweet potato
hmm.
cocktail,
Yep.
and obviously simplicity helps. So it would be
Hmm.
nice if it was. The great thing about the Negroni is, of course, it's 3 ingredients. It would
Yep.
be nice if we could come up with a. I love the idea of the apple sweet potato thing. I think is interesting,
Hmm.
and I don't know that many people that have played around with it, but that with some warmth could be really really rich and inviting.
Right.
So it'll
Well,
be
haven't we come across the idea of sort of kocha or black tea as a there's
yeah,
sometimes
that's
you'll get some
true.
black tea notes in some sweet potato shochus, and you get the spiciness of black pepper and that sort of thing. It could be an interesting
That's
play
true.
if you figure out what your third ingredient is, right?
We
You get
did
some
come across that we came across that in Japan,
yeah,
actually, you and
yeah,
I.
exactly. Right, right, right.
And that was, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was like a really good Japanese tea with a really good sweet potato shochu, and they went marvelously together.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, that's a
Yeah.
good point
So
too, and that's not tough. Everybody knows how to make tea.
right.
So
And so what's the third ingredient? Milk or sugar? What do you take in your
right,
tea?
right.
Depends on if you're English or not, I think.
I think yeah, right. I think if you had a syrup of some sort, maybe it's
Hmm.
a like a kokuto sugar syrup would be really nice.
Ooh,
Um,
are you talking?
but you're gonna. I mean, I don't know if anybody makes that. Not a good one anyway. Do they?
I've had a very nice syrup, but I don't know if it was actual Coke dough. It was, I forget what it was called. It was called, I think, Kuromitsu, maybe? Black honey. Am I saying that
Okay.
right? Yeah,
Kuromitsu.
yeah. It
Yeah,
was
or that's
really,
almost like could
I
almost
was
be a
using that.
molasses.
Yeah, I was using that as a replacement for my simple syrup for a little while. Um, so yeah, no, I think you're right. Maybe yeah, something to bring up some sweetness for sure. I'm not sure if you'd want any acid in it or not, because we'll have to play around with it. That's a cool idea. I like the black tea emo
It's
shochu.
a that could be a real like Kagoshima treat right there
Mm-hmm.
if you do take the sweetness from the kokuto and you're
Kokuto
using a southern Kagoshima tea
tea. Yep. Yep.
varietal, and then you got your sweet potato. It could be good.
That should be
Um,
the Satsuma.
the Satsuma, yeah,
Should be the drink name, right? You've got
right.
the Japanese as a cocktail name, right? We talked about that last week with Matt Hall,
Uh, oh yeah, I forgot about that. The
which had
Japanese.
nothing to do with Japan.
No, not at all. That's
It's just
I
because there
love
was a
the
delegation.
history. Love the
Yep.
history behind that one. If you didn't watch last week's episode with Matt, I'll go back and watch number 122.
Yep.
because there are some dingers in there with just the cocktail history is fascinating. I love it,
It is. It
and we're
is.
just trying to add to it now. So we need people at home experimenting
Yeah.
with shochu, and the thing that we were talked about is because we're trying to figure this out too. We don't have the answers. We're asking for help here. Like, help
That's
us
right.
find the one or two go-to sweet potato shochu cocktails. And we were just saying maybe it's a case of you sit at home, go to the liquor store, buy all the all the classic liqueurs, get a
Hmm.
ball, assemble your home bar if it's not already put together, and then just start going like 1 to 1, like half ounce of this and like sweet potato shochu and this, and see what happens with it. And then does it take one or two more ingredients to bring it around to something that is,
Hmm.
is it a long drink? Is it, is it going to benefit from sparkling water or something? But you got to start understanding how those different flavors play together. And I
Hmm.
think that's
Hmm.
something that takes a lot of bravery. It's a big risk. It's money, if
Yeah.
you're a bar. So, and not
Yeah.
all bars are prepared to or have the budget to allow people that level of
Yeah.
elbow room.
And if you want to hack it a little bit, just bring a little sample of your favorite sweet potato shochu to your favorite bartender and see what they can do with it. It might
Yeah,
give you some
sure.
ideas. If
Yeah.
they know what they're doing, they'll smell it, taste it, and mix up something pretty interesting. I mean, you and I have both seen Shingo Gokkan basically working with his team at one
Oh
of his
yeah.
bars here in Japan, where he'll taste something, throw
He'll
some things together.
workshop it real quick. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So you get the right bartender, and they can make that stuff happen. This
Yeah.
sounds pretty wild. Lacto cranberry cordial is the one that's the part of that that's got me kind of scratching my head.
Yeah.
But that's very cool. That's a Cosmo would actually drink.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, some acid as well. Look at that. Thanks for that, Chris. That's a cool one. Looks like we got to go to Knoxville.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Huh.
opposed.
$16 bargain. I mean, they're well. I mean, it's pretty much par for the course these days.
Yep.
Decent cocktails are always going to be at least $14 these days.
Yeah,
It
that's another
seems.
thing that shocked me on this trip was that the price of everything has definitely gone up. And I know a lot of that is like in the states that I was visiting, there's been increases in the minimum wage, in like not carving out exemptions for restaurants anymore. So you can't pay the wait staff $2 an hour and they work on tips, right? Things have changed,
Uh
so
huh.
prices have gone up. But yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you're right. $16 for cocktails is something we don't even bat an eye at it anymore.
No.
Uh, but it is amazing that you're now going into restaurants and not fancy bars and paying the same price for cocktails that 3 years ago you were paying at Death and Company and PDT and Pegu
Yeah.
Club, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what
It
did I
is.
see, a 25 $28 cocktail on a menu on this trip, which that was a little dear. Um,
That sounds like employees only, basically,
yeah, you're
to
getting
me.
up to like premium whiskey for prices at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What you were saying earlier, just to come back around to your comment about how sweet potato shochu is so broad and where barley and rice are a little bit narrower. And I think you're right about that. And if you started to think about, for example, with rice and barley, because you have these two big buckets, which is vacuum and atmospheric distilled, but they're
Sure.
all made from these grains, right? And of course, you can play with yeasts and other things to change the profiles. But in some ways, it's almost in that bifurcation of vacuum versus atmospheric for rice and barley. I almost think of rye, because
Uh
rye
huh.
whiskey, you've got your high content rye whiskeys that are very spicy and bold, and then you've got your low rye content rye whiskeys because they're like 51% rye, so they qualify as a rye. But then they've got the corn and other things that make it much sweeter and much more mellow, or they're almost
Hmm.
bourbon like, right? And it's almost that bifurcation where if you make a rye Manhattan with the high rye content versus the low rye content rye whiskey, they're going to express very, very differently. But that's
Yeah.
the bifurcation, like in rye, and that's what I see is probably the bifurcation, at least classically. At least I think that's changing. I think there are now more variations in what a rye mash bill looks like, but for a long time that was how it was. And so that's sort of like you might have your vacuum distilled barley shochu cocktail, vacuum distilled rice shochu cocktail, atmospheric for those as well. So you're talking about four drinks that are kind of like fit
Yeah.
the fit the profile. With sweet potato, you don't have even 4 drinks, I think, with all the different variation in the how the potato itself expresses, and everything else. So it's a pretty
It's intense.
pretty
There's a
yeah,
lot to dig into. There's a lot of
yeah,
opportunity. It's chaotic, and that chaos equals opportunity, I think.
right.
So yeah, for anybody, any home bartenders or bartenders out there who are just trying to do something completely different, there's a lot of there are a lot of things that can happen. The sky's the
Hmm.
limit with these drinks. So
Yeah,
and these are just and we're only talking about the three main ingredients by
right.
sales volume and by value. There's a lot of other stuff out there. So I think it's
Yeah,
best to dip your toes in where with the stuff that everybody is familiar with, and then you'll be able to more easily onboard some of the rare stuff as it comes through the program down the
yeah.
line.
I've been playing around with kabosu juice and rum, and I realized last night actually, I was like, why don't I throw some Kokuto sugar shochu in here? And so I did basically it was 50-50 kabosu and soda. So it was basically a highball, kabosu Kokuto shochu highball. And it worked. It was nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Kabosu, yeah,
Kabosu is
yeah.
it's a local citrus down here in Japan. It's kind of what in between an orange and a lime maybe. It's got some sweetness, but it's got some acidity.
Hmm.
It's not just lemon or lime complete acid. It's got some sweetness, which is a fun one to play with. Yeah, this made me laugh. The Tito's of Japan. It's not incorrect.
They don't even sell it here, so I don't know what you're talking about. So
Right.
that's a great example, Chris. Saiten, yeah, do they sell it in Japan? It's probably available at the distillery or something, but
I-10,
I have never seen it
I've
on a
never
shelf.
seen it. Never seen it on a shelf in Japan. It's really an export brand, which I think is another way they were modeling after Mizu Shochu, which is really, 99.5% export.
Yep.
Um, yeah, but Tito's in Japan just makes me funny. It makes me laugh because Tito's is not a craft vodka. It's not a handmade vodka. It's a mass-produced vodka that's marketed as craft.
Uh-huh.
And I love Ichiko. I love Kamoshirui. They are not a small company.
No, they are definitely not small.
Yeah,
Um, but it's also we're talking just totally different production processes
sure, sure.
and barley shochu should never be confused with vodka. So
No doubt.
yeah, yeah. So it's like it's the two. That's a dirty word for me. Yeah, using vodka. The word vodka or the word soju, those two words should never be used in the context of a conversation about Japanese shochu or Japanese awamori. So you found my trigger there, Chris.
Well,
But
that was
that's
my
still fun. That's
introduction. Was
funny.
that Izakaya's waitress when she first introduced me to shochu? She said it's like Japanese vodka, and she is
Oh,
Japanese, and I still tried it.
that's
So
interesting. And then
yeah,
you're
but
like,
it
"Oh,
was
you lied to me. That's not like vodka at all."
yeah, right.
Just
I mean, my
such a risky thing to say to somebody. I
yeah,
mean, anybody who
that's
knows
right,
anything about alcohol is like, "That's not like vodka at all. What are you talking about? You don't have you ever tried this?" And she'll be like,
right,
"No,
yeah.
I drink, I drink beer." Anyway,
Yeah,
let's. I guess we should move on to the because we're past a half hour. We wanted to
yeah,
keep
sure.
this one short. So newly opened.
Yeah,
Why don't you go first because yours is cooler.
I got a fun one actually. Matt Alt, who you all met on the show last week, if you didn't know him before, he actually sent me a bottle of Japanese vermouth. So this is
That's
basically Japanese vermouth, and I cracked this. Wasn't sure exactly what to do with it. The first drink I made with it actually was a 50-50 martini with Japanese gin, and it was very, very nice in that expression. I then tried to make a riff on a white Negroni, and it did not go well. That got mixed with soda and a little bit of simple syrup. um, but it's interesting. It's made with kabosu, which we mentioned before, as one of the citric, and then it's got sansho pepper, which is like a Japanese Szechuan peppercorn,
Szechuan.
not quite as spicy, and then yuzu, which I'm sure people are familiar with, and then yomogi. So we've talked about
Oh,
yomogi, I think,
wow.
before as it's a what is it? Something root,
Mugwort.
mugwort. So it's a mugwort, kabosu, sansho, yuzu are the four things, and it's actually a mix of sake and shochu in the to give it the alcohol in it. So
Huh.
it's got some spirit in it. So I figure on Japan distilled it still works.
It
It actually is
qualifies.
available in the States. In fact, I saw it in liquor stores in the States and I couldn't find it in Japan. And I was lamenting to Matt about it. And we talked about it. He's like, "Oh, I just found it in my local liquor store. Let me send you a bottle." And so he did. So thank you, Matt. Uh, Japanese vermuto. And I'm almost out of
Nice.
vermouth. So I got something else to play with.
Perfect timing. Yeah, I had that. I think I've had that once, and it was at no, I've had it a couple of times. I had it once at in a cocktail at Umami Mart, and then I had it again at in a cocktail at the that gin bar that we went to in Takadano Baba maybe
Hmm.
last year. Very that's a great one. I busted out one of the one of
Oh,
the big boys yesterday.
you were clearly missing
Morizo.
Japan.
Yeah, so I just was like it actually, to be fair, it wasn't I didn't open it yesterday, but I did take it down by a few rungs.
Yeah,
It had been hiding. I was kind of rearranging things. So when I left, I took all the big bottles down, all the clay pots down, put them on the floor because earthquakes.
sure. Yep.
And then as I was putting everything back slowly, I was finding things at the back of the shelf. I was like, that needs to be enjoyed. And I just had this. I remember having this conversation with Victoria in San Francisco, and I was just thinking, a lot of things were going on in life at the time, and had funerals were involved in all this thing, and I was thinking, if I die tomorrow and am given the choice to go back and do it all over again, would I ever drink low quality booze again? Like, would I? And the answer is, I probably would. I'd probably go back and drink all the best stuff. I probably wouldn't save anything. I'd just go back and enjoy stuff.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and there's a part of me that when I got back to Tokyo, I was like, you know what? Enough with this shit. I'm just gonna drink this stuff because I
Sure,
can get more
sure.
of it, most of it anyway.
Yep, yep,
So, and Morizo, of course, is very hard to get your hands on.
yep,
It is the OG of the famous super 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 so popular that people who don't know anything about shochu in Japan actually know this brand. That's how powerful the brand was for a long
yep,
time, and
yep.
probably still is,
I
honestly.
think it is. Yep.
And you really your best bet for buying a bottle is probably business class on a JAL flight.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to really scrounge, or it's the the uh, what's the word, the gray market.
Mm,
it's
right.
the auction sites online where you can go and pay way too much for a bottle. And it was nice. I really recommend sipping it neat just to get a feel for it because it is really
Hmm.
smooth. It's a white koji kogane sengan sweet potato shochu made on the Osumi Hanto, the right leg of Kagoshima Prefecture.
Yeah, over on the
Very
east side
limited
near
quantities.
Miyazaki. Yep.
Yep, and it's
Well, it's a
nice.
nice one.
I drank it oyuari, obviously.
I can't imagine you drinking it any other way.
Right.
That's a good one for sure. I remember sharing bottles of that at house parties in New York, and people always being very, very happy. So, and I agree with you. We these drinks are intended to be enjoyed, so you don't have to be too precious about them. Of course, if it's something that you're never going to be able to get again, I've got a bottle of the first release of the Genshu from Amakusa for Genotsuya. I
Okay.
think you and I both received bottles of that as
Yep.
a gift from friends of
Yeah.
ours here in
And that's
Fukuoka.
not coming back around, so you need a special occasion for that.
They're like
Yeah.
234 bottles total. They're like hand numbered. Like I haven't cracked that yet. I will. I will. But
Yeah.
that one's going to
At some
be
point.
definitely a special occasion. So those are the bottles you sort of hang on to a little bit. But you find a rare or hard to find bottle, enjoy it, share it with friends. People aren't going to remember you for what you collected. They're going to remember you for what you shared with them.
Sure. Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
cool.
Well,
It was fun chat. Glad you're back. Welcome home.
yeah, I'm glad I'm back too. Thank you. Good to see you again, and good to see everybody who stuck around for the full 40 minutes of this thing.
Yeah,
And thank you, Chris, for your comments. That was I love the detail in there, and they
for
obviously
sure.
spark brainwaves and rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. I guess we'll call it a day there. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Show Tuesday. You can find us every week, of course, same time, same place, and we will be coming back at you next week. We can, you know what? Next week is going to be tough for us to join because we're going to be in Okinawa. at
But
10. I have no idea what we're going to be doing. Are we going to already be on our way?
maybe let's just do a live from wherever we are in Okinawa.
Okay, that might have
We
to be
keep
the
it
thing.
short.
Yep.
I'll bring my little steady cam holder for my phone, and if we have to do it that way, we'll do it that way.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yep. Got to plan ahead for that.
All right.
Great. So thank you, everybody. From
Yeah.
both of us here in Japan to all of you out there around the world, a very hearty and heartfelt kanpai.
Kanpai. Cheers.
Cheers.